Try to pull that up too. All right, guys. If you were just joining us, as usual, I'm going to let the folks kind of trickle in here. Let me get over to the main room where you guys are going to be on the, excuse me, the chat room, so I can view that window as well. And we'll start off slow like we usually do as everybody makes their way into the room. Josh Hoffman is first. First in, Matthew Turner, Brooke Berthod. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your last name. Godcotti is in here. Tyler Wildman. Yep. Tyler says Trump just made bump stocks illegal. And Josh, who is our guest tonight, I'll introduce him here in a second, was just filling me in on that. I guess we'll kick it off right off the bat with that. Frank's in here. Bronco, Average Joe. We'll give it just a second real quick before I introduce Josh, so that more folks can get in here before we kick things right off. So again, let me make sure. And Josh, we still got you with us?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. Excuse me. Let me go back. Minimize this window so I can see comments over here. And I should be able to, again, guys, if you're just joining us, I'm waiting on folks to kind of come into the room, enough people so we can go ahead and get started. And right now I'm just trying to get all of my comments over on the one end where I can follow up with you guys. There we go. All right, again, some of the folks in here, let me go over some of the guys that we got in here just as a roll call. Angel Dog, Frank's in here. Will Standrich, Mr. F&H and Friends F&H. John Pateley, Subjective Opinions. Greg Jones. I'm glad you guys could all make it. Arnaldo Roman is in here. Guys, I want to introduce a guest that we have on here tonight. His name is Josh Barnhill. He's a friend of mine. He's an attorney out of the Lafayette, Louisiana area. And timing couldn't be any more perfect. We were going to go over some possible legislation here in Louisiana. And as I was getting ready to come on live tonight, Josh forwarded me a link of the new wording that, in essence, outlaws bump stocks. And one of you guys actually pointed to that as you were logging in. Josh, I don't know anything about it because I just got the link from you. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you could just kind of kick it off and tell us what it all says. And again, guys, this is Josh Barnhill. He is an attorney and a friend of mine.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for letting me be the Louisiana version of Adam Kraut for a little while. I actually know about 2 minutes more than you do. I was actually playing on Instagram, and it was Adam Kraut's Instagram who posted that that the Justice Department had proposed this rule, or put out a new proposed rule that, from the looks of it, and again, it's 55 pages long, and I've just read the last page, and is where the definition is, but it seems to just tacks on to the existing definition of a machine gun, and it just includes 2 additional sentences that basically it says that it just includes bump stock type devices to be included with the term machine gun. And I guess I could just read it. It says, i.e., devices that allow a semi-automatic firearm to shoot more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger by harnessing the recoil energy of the semi-automatic rifle to which it is affixed, so that the trigger resets and continues firing without additional physical manipulation of the trigger by the shooter. So a bump stock, I guess.
Well, I'm just looking through here. Excuse me. I haven't had a chance to print or read any of this. I'm just reading the very beginning of it coming from the Department of Justice. Is this a proposed word change, or this is something that's being handed down as policy?
It's a proposed rule. I mean, my understanding, and again, I haven't hardly looked at it, but it seems that, all right, so you had the proposed rule, I guess, back at the end of December back in 2017, where the ATF says, okay, we're going to re-examine our previous ruling to determine whether or not bump stocks are machine guns, and then they had all the comments in early then went on to January 25th, and they were basically going to say, okay, we're going to give you an answer whether yes or no bump stocks fall in. Well, this basically says, we're not determining whether it is or it isn't. We're telling you, we're just rewriting the definition. We're just going to rewrite what the definition of a machine gun is. Now, the ATF has said itself, and actually sent a letter to Congress back in 2013, I believe, telling Congress that they don't have the authority, or ATF doesn't have the authority to change the definition of a machine gun, that bump stocks, they determined in 2010, bump stocks do not fall under the definition of a machine gun, and that ATF does not have the authority to change the definition. Now, this rule is 55 pages long, so I'm assuming in there the Department of Justice is saying that they do have the authority. I don't know what their argument is. One thing that popped into my head that really what I do in terms of firearm law, I know Paul knows this, but the rest of y'all don't, is I work for a firearms manufacturer, but my area of expertise is more silencers, that part of the NFA. So the first thing that popped into my mind was, well, great. If the ATF saying can change definitions, why don't they change the definition of a change it so that a silencer is not defined as a firearm under the NFA, or at the very least, they can change the definition and move it from just a regular firearm to any other weapon, so they can change the tax stamp from $200 to $5. Now, I don't know what their reasoning is, but that was the first thing that popped in my head was, let's change the definition of a silencer then.
Well, I guess like you being in law, of course, anytime you open up and set a precedent for something, you set a precedent for everything. And you're right. I mean, if they can apply some kind of a method to what they're doing now, why can't it be applied across the board? My concern is looking at this coming from the Department of Justice. Are they, again, I know you haven't read the whole thing or had a chance to, and I'm going to read it as soon as we get off of this live stream tonight. But looking at the first couple of pages of it, are they telling the ATF that we're changing? Can the DOJ change the ATF's wording, or are they suggesting what the ATF should do to change their own wording? Because you see what I mean? They're two different departments.
Well, the ATF is under the DOJ, and the way that, like, the NFA and the GCA works is the Congress basically gives authority to the Department of Justice to come up with the regulations to enforce the rules. So you have the actual law, and then you have the the code, I guess, CFRs that sort of practically implement the law. And that falls on the DOJ, and the Attorney General again passes that down to the ATF. So the director of the ATF basically is the one who comes up with the CFR, subject to kind of the oversight of. He's still subject to the Attorney General and the Assistant Attorney General, but in essence, I don't know who actually drafted this. If somebody within the Attorney General's office, I'm guessing, because he signed it. The Attorney General is the one who actually signed it.
I guess what I'm asking is, I understand the reporting protocol as far as the DOJ being over the ATF, but the whole reason for, even though I don't agree with the ATF and how it's just a bunch of bureaucrats, the whole point of the ATF was to form an organization that had, quote, experts in it. And clearly the reason why that organization was formed is because the experts don't reside in the DOJ. So why would DOJ, which is not the house of the ATF or the gun experts, so to speak, why would they write anything since they don't have people on their payroll who are, quote, experts? Again, I use that word loosely, and then send that down. And I'm not debating you on that, because you don't know either, but I don't understand why the DOJ would even attempt to have any hand in the wording, since they admittedly are not the experts in it to begin with.
To me, the reason that it came directly from the Attorney General is because the ATF already said, we can't do this. And President Trump specifically directed the Attorney General, I want to do this. And so the Attorney General, I guess, said, okay, here it is. Here's the language. Because look, it says right. I found here actually was the summary under the last proposed order. I found this information when I was looking at the when I was kind of preparing this topic before the new rule came out. But when the ATF, again, this was the proposed rule back in the end of December, revisiting whether or not bump fire stocks are machine guns. It says in the background here I got all this information on regulations.gov. It says the Attorney General has delegated the responsibility for administering and enforcing these laws to the Director of ATF, subject to the direction of the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. See 28 CFR 0.130. So that's, and the Attorney General gets his authority is responsible for enforcing the GCA and the NFA, and there's specific statutes outlining that. So I guess the law gives the Attorney General the authority, and then the CFRs, the Attorney General has delegated that authority to the ATF. But apparently he has retained, even though he's delegated it, it appears that I haven't read those CFRs, but apparently they still have the authority under the law. So I guess the law would, if there is a conflict, I guess you would argue the law trumps the CFR. So the Attorney General does have the responsibility under the law to enforce it.
This is kind of interesting too. I mean, the 50-something pages that they have in here, I'm just skimming through it right now. It's almost like they're trying to give you a history of everything to try to justify whatever reasoning they're making behind it. They're talking about the Las Vegas shooting. They mentioned how actually exactly what we were just talking about. They specify that the DOJ is over the ATF, as if everybody didn't already know that. It's like they're trying to say, hey, this is why we have authority to say this, because we are over the ATF. What I'm trying to skim through here for, though, is trying to find, it looks like as many times as they use bump fire devices or bump fire style, do they, when they finally get past their 50-something pages of history, do they actually name it as a bump style device, or are they still hanging on to that really ambiguous, open-ended wording of rate increasing device? Have you seen that? Or, I mean, do they specifically say a bump style device or bump whatever, or are they still calling it a rate increasing device? Do you know that?
I mean, I haven't flipped through the whole thing, but I mean, at the very end, I mean, it looks like they have a proposed definition, and what they call it bump stock type devices, and then they define what that device is, and they seem to exclude it says, without additional physical manipulation of the trigger by the shooter. So it would seem to be limited to devices where your finger is stationary and you're just using the recoil energy of the firearm. And so I guess like a binary trigger would be out, or I know some people I've seen online demonstrated where they can, I guess when the whole debate was about what is a rate increasing device, and you see videos of people actually just using their finger to manipulate the firearm to shoot basically full auto, and it doesn't seem to include that either, because that would be, I would think, additional physical manipulation of the trigger. So it's not as, I guess, as broad. I mean, again, I haven't gone through the whole thing, but from the definition at the end that I read, it doesn't seem to be as broad as rate increasing devices. It has to be somewhat narrow, more narrowly tailored. And I haven't read a ton of ATF proposed rules. I've read, the 41F, a couple others, and I will give them this: they do a great job of giving history and law and lots of facts. Pro, against, it doesn't matter. They put it all in there. They do a great job. Now the problem is, most of the time you get to this point, if it's a proposed rule like 41F, there's a ton of stuff in there. You're like, well, all this information you're giving us, you're kind of making the case that shows that silencers aren't used in crimes, but then they passed it anyway. Because usually when you get to this point, this is just a formality, putting it out there for comments. This is going to be a rule, or it's going to go into effect, and this is going to be the definition of a machine gun. But what's likely to happen is that it's going to be tied up in litigation as soon as as soon as it goes into effect. I mean, because you had the ATF itself, like I said before, in 2013, told Congress that they don't have the authority to do this. So I imagine right out the gate, I'm sure people are reading right now, probably the Gun Owners of America, GOA, and other organizations like that are probably already going through this thing and putting together a litigation right now, or in the processes of starting it. So, I mean, once it gets tied up, it's not going to be, it's basically going to put everything on hold until that's settled.
Now, is there any legal precedent to, if anything like this is proposed, I'm assuming the companies who currently make and sell these can continue as usual? I mean, nothing changes in their world until something is passed?
I would think unless there is and again, this is not exactly my expertise, but if it's challenged, I would think they could go on unless there was an injunction filed against them to not produce these devices while it's being worked out. But other than that, I mean, again, this is not my area of expertise, but I think they could continue to, while this is in litigation, they can continue to produce their products.
I'm about halfway through this thing, and I can tell you that everything they're talking about at this point, they are going above and beyond to try to specify bump stock. So they are trying to get away from, apparently they heard everybody loud and clear, and I'm not saying it's okay to ban a bump stock. I'm just saying apparently their little term or their little phrase, rate increasing device, somebody heard everybody loud and clear, because they do not use that set of words in here at all. And they really go to a lot of pains to make sure that they are specifying bump stock type device. That's their new, I guess that's the new ATF phrase that's going to be affixed to this, a bump stock type device. It's hyphenated. Bump stock type is hyphenated. So that's going to be now, instead of saying rate increasing device, they're going to call them, I guess, bump stock type devices. The thing that's just, it's laughable if it wasn't so, or it would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. The fact that they can just name this thing and say that it's a machine gun when it clearly is not a machine gun just because it has a bump stock on it. That's what blows my mind. I mean, if you can just not even reword something, but just all of a sudden make the claim that something is what it's not, that really opens up some crazy doors. I mean, you can just, I mean, why can't we just call everything now assault weapons? Because that's what people want to call them anyway. People have been wanting to say that the bump stock devices turn your gun into a machine gun. Well, now they've basically told them, given them permission to say that it is going to, in fact, turn it into a machine gun. To me, that's where the slippery slope is, where we start allowing them to just rename stuff, even when the definition of it is clearly not accurate.
Yeah, I mean, and then also it puts it so the ATF can say all at once in its proposed rule here what its intentions are. But as soon as it's passed and it's a regulation, well, now it's in the hands of prosecutors and judges to interpret it. And, they may know full well what the ATF was after, but, they may, judges and prosecutors have political agendas just like a lot of other people. And, once it's on the books, it's just, like you said, a slippery slope. You just chip away a little bit, you get one, you get a case here that, pushes a little further, and it builds on a little further and a little further. And, when it's in the hands of judges and prosecutors, I mean, it's dangerous.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm listening to you. I'm trying to flip through this, and it's incredible the fluff that these people can put in here. It says, this is kind of interesting. They're estimating, or they have somebody that estimated with all their fact-finding mission, that there are 400,000 bump stock type devices have been sold in the United States. Said ATF estimates that in the first 2 years that bump stock type devices were in the market, approximately 35,000 were sold per year. Wow.
And I want to say, if anybody is looking for it, it was harder than I thought to find. How I finally found it. I actually went on the regulations.gov website, and I was kind of having trouble, but I went to the ATF, or I went to the DOJ website, and if you click on there at the bottom, they have a press release tab, and it was like the third press release, and then there was a link to it. It was a PDF link in the press release. So if anybody's looking for the bill or the proposed rule, so they can find it there.
What I'll try to do
themselves.
is, after we get done here, I'll try to take this the link of that and post it down in the description under the video. Wow, this is something, man. Now I'm going to have something to read tonight when I get done. Again, just trying to skim through it right now. Amazing. Very disheartening to see that our DOJ, that's supposed to be run by a pro-gun guy, is making this proposal. Well, not to bore everybody, I'm not going to sit here. Anytime I see a dollar sign, I want to stop and look at it because I'm curious what they're talking about. Should this rule take effect, public comment suggests that unsellable inventory could be worth approximately $35,000 per large retailer. See, I thought they were supposed to really take their time on all of the comments that came in. Apparently, they've already compiled all that, and that's why they put this out, because they're basing a lot of their information on the
comments. I'm sure they got a ton of comments from the previous rule, the one from December, the ATF rule deciding on whether or not bump stocks were included in machine gun, and I kept seeing in newspaper articles that they're talking about 36 or 30-something thousand comments. And you go on regulations.gov, and it said there's 115,916 comments received on the proposed rule that would interpret the statutory definition of machine gun under the NFA and GCA to clarify whether certain devices known as bump fire stocks fall within that definition. So I'm sure that a lot of the comments and stuff in this new proposed rule probably came from those comments. Because again, the ATF was deciding, is it in the definition? Is it not? Does it fall under it? And then the DOJ came out today and said, that doesn't matter because here's the new definition.
Interesting. Well, I guess we'll see what well, once everybody has time to digest this thing and really take it all in, it's gonna I don't know, man. I'm surprised at this. Of course, here you go, releasing something on a Friday afternoon. Surprised they didn't do it next week, going into Easter weekend. That would be about right. So it can get buried. Very disappointing.
Somewhere that I don't know. I saw a comment somewhere. Somebody said, "Oh, the reason Trump did this is because he knows the ATF can't do it, and it'll be found unconstitutional in the court. So he wants to appear like he's doing something, but he's really not." I hope he's that smart. I don't know. It's made me. I got my "Make America Great Again" hat back there, but after reading this, I almost thought about throwing it in the trash. But I figure we'll wait and play it out and see what's really going on.
Yeah, sometimes I guess they feel like they have to throw the bone to this anti-gun crowd out there. But as most of us already know, doesn't matter how many bones you throw at them, they want a bigger bone each time. So this is not going to quiet them. In fact, what they'll say is, well, if we can do this at bump stocks, why can't we do it with AR-15s? That's going to be their next comment. If this was so easy to do with a bump stock, why don't we outlaw AR-15s or 30-round magazines or some stupid thing like that? I don't know. Again,
when your next president is a Democrat, he or she could just tell their attorney general, we want a rule saying that semi-automatic weapons are now illegal. Find something in the, just change machine guns to include semi-automatic or full semi, as apparently there's a new term coined. It, like you said, it's a slippery slope. Every president from this point forward, why not? Why not do it?
Well, what I'll probably do is I'll read through all of this definitely tonight. And I'll put something together and try to summarize this thing just to see what they're talking about. And really, I hate not being prepared, having read it yet, but it's too big to not talk about, even though we're really not prepared to talk about it. And neither one of us have read through this yet. But I felt like it was definitely something we needed to talk about on here since it was so fresh and new, and it seems to be hitting right now because I've actually got 4 text messages while we've been sitting here from different people across the country that are friends of mine in the industry. They're like, man, have you seen this? And they're all sending me the link. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious that this is hitting within the last hour or so.
Yeah.
Josh, let's talk a little bit about what you and I discussed yesterday. We're talking about some of the legislation that's being attempted to be pushed through and possibly fast tracked through this in the state of Louisiana, because I know a lot of the folks out there, their states may have similar things like it. I know this is going to rehash some of the same conversation we had yesterday, but obviously we have more of an audience today, and yesterday was more of kind of a test run anyway. So can we go back over that again, what you and I discussed last night, and kind of rehash over the same thing, please?
Sure. We're talking about proposed Senate Bill 231, which is up for a floor vote Monday at 4 o'clock, the 26th. And basically what 231 does, it expands, let's see, basically, it expands what's considered to be a violation of a protective order to include possession of firearms. Now, in Louisiana, there's already a statute that if you have a protective order or restraining order against you, you can't be in possession of firearms. And there are a few exceptions to that. And basically, in order for you not to be able to be in possession of firearms, it has to say in this protective order that you are, dangerous to the person who the protective order is under, and you have to be notified that you are losing your right to possess firearms. But this expands the definition of what's considered, it creates a new crime, what considers a violation of your protective order. Now, what makes it, I think, dangerous really dangerous, and what nobody's really talked about, even in the committee hearing on the bill, is that it creates a mandatory reporting requirement for dealers, meaning that if somebody comes into, if a licensed dealer, if somebody comes in, wants to purchase a firearm from you, you do the 4473, the NICS background check. If that background check comes out a denial, you have to now notify the local sheriff within 24 hours that somebody has come in and had a denial. And then the sheriff has 24 hours then to search the various databases, Louisiana, out of state, to determine if that person has a protective order or restraining order against them. Now, the really scary thing is that the penalty against the dealer is the same as the person who has attempted to purchase the firearm. Basically, if the dealer doesn't report within 24 hours, he has to pay at least no less than $1,000 or no more than a $5,000 fine, or imprisoned at hard labor for not less than 5 years or more than 20 years. So if you violate the statute, you could be looking at least 5 years in Angola because you didn't report to the sheriff that that somebody was denied on their NICS check. Now, people can say, I've heard people tell me it's like, oh, there's prosecutorial discretion. The DA around here would never pursue that against a dealer. Somehow somebody turned him in. That just is not a big deal. The problem is, you continue on in the bill, there's a requirement that if the sheriff or local law enforcement reasonably knows, let me find the exact language. It says, the law enforcement agency discovers that a licensed dealer knew or should have known that the purchaser or attempted purchaser was prohibited from possessing a firearm, and the dealer failed to report it. The sheriff or local law enforcement is then required to contact the licensing agencies. So even if the local prosecutor decides not to prosecute you, the sheriff is still required under law to contact the ATF and tell them that you have violated Louisiana law, which could probably ultimately end up with you losing your license. Nobody's really talking about that. actually I wasn't at the hearing, but if you go to the Louisiana legislature, actually their website is actually not too bad. If you go to legis.la.gov, you can actually look at the archive footage from the hearing in which I watched today. And, you had 20 something people for it because it's dealing with domestic violence. And so, you had lots of people for it. You had people talking about, giving statistics, domestic violence statistics and stuff like that. And actually the senator who proposed the bill was, is couching this in terms of this is trying to fix the holes in the current domestic violence statutes. Because right now it's a crime for somebody that has a protective order to attempt to purchase a firearm, but they said there's no way for the police to know if somebody's attempting to do it. So that is the purpose of, they say, adding this requirement that the dealer tell sheriff. But I mean, to me, the punishment for failing to do so is pretty steep. Plus the fact that, I mean, there was one person that spoke up against it, and I'm assuming his attorney based how he was talking, and he got up there and he talked about certain issues and some of them that I think are sort of important, but it would take way too much time to dive into them any further. But one of them he was talking about, he was concerned about the Fifth Amendment rights of the person who the protective order was filed against, and the senator, they basically kind of forced him out. He was taking about 10 minutes into his speech. They said, you need to hurry up. We're going to move this along. And they kind of basically forced him out. And then the senator who proposed this bill, laughingly laughed away his Fifth Amendment concerns for the people who it was, protective order may be against. And this is what he says: I always find interesting that when we have bills proposed trying to protect the victim, there is always someone who says we have to protect the assailant, which essentially he's basically saying the victim has rights, but the accused does not. And that's kind of, that's all I needed to know when I heard him say that. I mean, it's,
well, we were talking a little bit last night, and, my thing is, if they're not, most bills that are going to involve additional labor or something to get the job done identifies where the money's going to come from and how it's going to be allocated. And this bill doesn't state anything about who's going to pay for what, when clearly there's going to be an additional workload involved at the sheriff's office. So who pays for it? This is going to be, again, as we discussed last night, one of those unenforceable laws because there's not going to be the manpower to enforce it. So everybody's going to become relaxed around it and act like, well, it doesn't really exist. It has no teeth, not a big deal. And then somebody's going to get bitten by it because it is still technically a law. And then at some point, somebody's going to stumble across it and they're going to get nailed by it. That's what I'm fearful of, because it's not enforceable at this point. If you're not throwing money at it, there's no state funds or federal funds going towards it. It can't be enforced. The local sheriffs are not going to enforce this on their own without somebody allowing them to hire the additional FTEs or full-time employees to actually pay for that, because they don't have that money just sitting in a coffer somewhere and go, oh, cool, a new rule now that we have to enforce. Let's hire a couple extra people to do that. Most of these parishes are probably already maxed out. Yeah.
Well, I called the local sheriff's office today and talked to somebody there asking, what their thoughts are. If they have somebody at the office who kind of, is in charge, they have like a legislative section, and they say, no, the Sheriff's Association is sort of those are the people to talk to. He said that they're the ones that kind of monitor this. And he's like, they said basically the Sheriff's Association has no problem with it, or basically, endorses it, then it's likely to pass. But the local offices, I guess they would speak to the association, and the association speaks for all the sheriffs as a whole. That's my understanding, at least when it comes to, legislation, as to what's going to affect their bottom lines. And I also called my local senator's office to get any idea, see if my senator is not on the committee, Judiciary B committee, but I wanted to call and see if they had an idea if it's going to pass, not pass, anything like that. And they had no idea, but it didn't give me a lot of confidence when they said, but it does have to go to the House next, so you can contact your representatives, let them know you're opposed. So it doesn't give me great confidence that to me, that says that they kind of think it's going to pass the Senate, and they say, you need to go start talking to the House of Representatives now, or the Louisiana House. And I did, and next, if it passes the Senate, it goes to the committee. I don't know which committee. It goes to a committee in the House in the same process. It would have to come out of committee and then a floor vote, which the floor vote is live, and you can watch it on the archives. You can go in person. But I encourage everyone, one, read the bill if you want, but also I encourage to contact your senators because there's time, and say vote no on 231.
When does this session end? Do you know?
I'm not sure when the session ends. The majority of the, I guess, the anti-gun legislation hasn't even come out of, hasn't even been heard in committee yet. This is the first one. There's a little over 20 bills dealing with firearms. Of those, 10 of them are, you would probably, gun control type measures. And this is the first one to go to committee and then come out of committee. So the rest haven't even been scheduled yet. So you just have to keep an eye. Again, if you go to the website, you can track bills. You can sign in, create an account, and track bills. And usually at the end of the day, if you go and check, it seems to be usually about 5 or 5:30 at the end of the day. They'll schedule that. They'll post the schedule for the next day. So you don't get much lead time in deciding, if you want to attend or not. Especially, if you live in the Shreveport, Monroe area, it makes it kind of difficult to go if you wanted to speak at the committee hearings. Watching the archive footage, I don't know how much that would get you anyway. They kind of I'm sure they already have it predetermined what the vote's going to be. Yeah. There wasn't much debate, and there wasn't even, there's not even a yay or nay. It was just kind of at the end, they were like, okay, we're all good, right? Right. Okay, it passed. That was sort of it.
Unbelievable.
But as I was told by somebody, said, hey, that's Louisiana politics.
Like I've told people all the time before, unfortunately, we tend to fall, most people who are conservative or definitely pro Second Amendment, we have the I guess, very inconvenience of having actually jobs that in many cases do not prevent us from being able to go to our local state houses and places like that to protest, march, or whatever, because again, we got to be up in the morning and go to a job. So unfortunately, it seems like sometimes we're not as mobile and as vocal as some of the folks on the left. But again, we have commitments which include feeding our families, and to do that, we have to actually go get money. So that's the sad thing, is it looks like we don't have support on items sometimes, and we clearly do. It's just that it's not visible in terms of, people up there shaking their fist at the folks at the State House.
I think another problem is that there's a little bit of complacency, because it's like, oh, this is Louisiana, this is the sportsman's paradise. And actually, a representative who was in the House committee who's going to be hearing a bunch of these debates, these bills, I asked him, like, what are the chances of these coming out? He's like, probably most of them won't even come out. He goes, this is Louisiana. We're too conservative. But people keep saying that. But if you don't call because really the best way to do it, as soon as these things get filed, I know you got to stay on top of it, but you need to get to your representatives early, because all these deals, or like I said a minute ago, they're all made before it even comes up in the committee, whether or not these things are going to pass or not. I mean, probably not 100%, but a good bit of things are, the deals are done before they're even argued in committee. Yeah. So you get ahead of them from the beginning, and there needs to be a lot of opposition right from the get-go.
Well, that's all interesting stuff, Josh, and I appreciate you helping break some of this down for us. Guys, I know we talked last week, because typically I'm long-winded, and tonight it's Josh that's being long-winded. So I mean that in a good way.
I'm an attorney. We get paid by the word.
That's right. That's right. What I'd like to do now is, like we talked about last week, is kind of open it up to folks in the chat room. And what I'll do is, if you could, I don't mind taking any chances, but since we have, or any questions, but since Josh is here, I'd really like if you guys have any, quote, legal questions, not if you can go smack your kids around or anything like that. Actually something gun related, or Josh is kind of a liaison between firearms company and the ATF. So he is pretty familiar with a lot of the ATF rulings. So if you have any questions in that realm and the ATF's realm, and it's something that he may know the answer of, I'd like to get his feedback on, since we do have the opportunity to have him here with us also. So, I mean, I'm going to open the floor to everybody. If you guys could do like we did starting last week and address Legally Armed America in there so that it highlights it in red. So I see that it's a question you're directing towards Josh or myself. That way it helped me catch it as the comments are scrolling, because they are scrolling through pretty good. And I'm actually rolling through some of them right now. Josh, that's okay with you?
Yeah, no problem.
All right, guys, I'm rolling in here. I don't see anything yet. So, Josh, let's talk a little bit about the.
They don't want to hear me talk anymore. That's why.
One of the other bills that we were talking about the other day, what was the one we were discussing outside of this one we just talked about? Let's see.
Yes, I know we covered bump fire stocks. We talked about there's the Helena Moreno one, House Bill 603, which was kind of the big one, which I know you touched on before, that basically bans everything that's not a revolver or bolt action or grandfathered in. You know, it wouldn't leave many firearms to choose from.
Yeah.
Wouldn't leave much for dealers to sell.
I actually made some phone calls this week to a couple different people, and one person in particular, my suspicion was right, that they are trying to backdoor semi-auto pistols by saying if it has a detachable magazine and a threaded barrel. So again, I don't have one in here, but it could be this could be considered an assault weapon if it had a threaded barrel to accept a suppressor or silencer. So yeah, I mean, unofficially, they knew what they were doing whenever they put that wording in there. Very unfortunate that these guys are that slick and slimy to do something like that.
And another consequence that, you know, I'm sure it's intentional, but people don't think of, is that the more regulations, you know, like this Senate Bill 231, and just it goes after dealers. So if there's less people that want to deal with it, less FFLs, or dealers can't make money, gun shops, FFLs close their doors. There's nobody to sell guns. There's less of them around. I mean, that's a whole nother avenue of gun control that you don't really hear talked about a lot. I mean, they're attacking the economic liberties of people, you know, attacking their well-being. And I mean, and not just passing things, but I mean, proposed bans and all this stuff. It causes, you know, there's gun shops here or in this area where they're running low on inventory. They got people coming in like crazy wanting to buy things, but manufacturers have slowed down producing, and so they don't have anything to order to sell. So you know, the question is, was it because of the slowdown and they haven't ramped up, or are they waiting to see what kind of legislation may pass, and so they don't want to produce a bunch of things that might be banned, put a bunch of capital or a bunch of resources into merchandise that's illegal now. So I mean, now, you know, you got, even though there hasn't been anything banned, there are stores here that are like, shit, you know, we have a stockpile now, but we're running low, and you know, we call the distributor and they say, you know, we don't have anything to sell you.
Yeah. Daniel Waters just asked a question. Legally on America, can you explain why bump stocks are being banned? I just don't get it. Well, you joined the club, Daniel. I think it's 100% based on emotion. Bump stocks were used in one crime ever in the history of the United States. And unfortunately, 58 people were killed and another few hundred were actually shot and wounded. So that's why they're trying to ban them.
Opportunism, that's all it is.
Yeah. Because I mean, if what blows my mind, guys, and I'm sure everybody, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I hate even having to say that disclaimer, but somebody made a really good point yesterday, and I'll have to actually correct this comment here in a second. You'll see where I'm going with it. That you know, we've got pictures of the Austin bomber going into the FedEx building with his wig on, his baseball cap, and his gloves to go drop off one of his bombs that he mailed out. And we still don't have any video of the Las Vegas shooter carrying his 20-something rifles in. Crazy, crazy, crazy. You guys probably all saw this today. Today, they actually have released video of the Las Vegas shooter with one of the big racks that you roll your luggage in with, the concierge carts or whatever you want to call them. And he's got, I think they said it had, I don't know, 18 or 20 bags on it. Now, I couldn't tell. I think I was passing through when I saw it, so I didn't really get a chance to study the video. But I don't believe that they were even gun cases. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, anybody knows an AR-15. I mean, you can pack it into anything. So, yeah, after making those jokes that we know everything about the Austin bomb guy and absolutely hardly nothing about the Vegas guy, well, today video actually comes out. My reason for bringing that up is, you know, usually that kind of stuff, that's an evidence room. I mean, typically you're not going to be able to see all these pictures. I find it kind of odd that all the pictures came out so quick after that Las Vegas shooting. They came out so tremendously fast. And the whole time they're releasing these pictures, I'm like, isn't this a crime scene? I mean, I know the guy's dead, but it is a crime scene. You don't know if there's another guy involved or a bunch of other guys involved. We're sitting here releasing pictures of a crime scene. I know it wasn't police officers that released it. Do you actually let reporters go into a room and take pictures of a crime scene immediately after, you know, after the shooting? That whole situation in Vegas is just so screwy. Again, I'm not suggesting what happened because I don't have a clue, but I don't know that I've ever seen anything like this where if there's not another suspect, why are they being so protective about all the details other than the fact that it's Vegas and, you know, they don't want to scare people away? But I get it if the guy hadn't been killed and there was a trial that was going to be taking place. This is all evidence, but clearly there's no trial that's going to take place. So this guy, it's not, I mean, I know it's still technically evidence, but nobody's going to be on trial for it. So who cares what everybody knows? Why don't we know more about the Las Vegas shooting? And, you know, bump stocks just happen to be the one casualty that came out of that, other than, of course, I'm not trying to be insensitive, other than the people who were killed. But from a gun standpoint, bump stocks were the casualty out of that.
Well, you saw they tried to throw silencers in there as well. I mean, out of nowhere, I don't know, it was the next day or stuff or whenever it was, when Hillary Clinton tweeted out, I think, or whatever, however she sent it out, but she's like, just imagine how much worse it would have been if he would have had silencers, which it's just a ridiculous comment anyway, but it's kind of like, where the hell did that come from?
Right,
you know,
right. I mean,
the fact that the Hearing Protection Act, and I think at that time, it was they had rolled the Hearing Protection Act into that big I forget the legislation now, but it was like, you know, it was a big like hunting and sportsmen and you know, land act, and there was a good chance of it passing. And then this happened, and you know, the Democrats all of a sudden, and Tim Kaine as well, and the other ones, like all of a sudden just start throwing silencers out there out of nowhere, because the whole point is just, you know, to stop. Is for anti-gun legislation. They wanted to stop, and you know, Paul Ryan shelved the bill, and they pulled, you know, the Hearing Protection Act out of it, and that pretty much was the end of that.
I believe in coincidences, but it was very weird that I believe, and this isn't. I don't have it written down. I'm not reading it off anything. So if I'm wrong about the times, I'm sorry, but I know that it was either 1 or 2 weeks before the original Hearing Protection Act, the way it was originally written, was about to go to be debated or voted on. And then Scalise got shot. And then it came up again. I don't know if you might have just said this, but it came up again 1 or 2 weeks before the Las Vegas shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's like every time it came up, there was a shooting. And we were like, come on, man. I mean, first time it was a coincidence. Second time, you're like, when you thought about it, somebody at SHOT Show was who told me that this year. And I was like, you're right. I never even thought about it like that. I mean, it's uncanny how these coincidences seem to happen right whenever a vote is about to come up on something that we're all hopeful for and hoping that actually makes it through, and probably would have made it through, to be honest with you. I truly believe that at the time Scalise got shot, I believe that everything was at a point. There had not been any big tragedies involving guns other than in Chicago, which is nightly anyway. So there wasn't anything that had been taking place. where there was no excitement. There was no one was on edge in terms of guns in America. And I felt like we got a great opportunity. And then that happened with Scalise. And I was like, the Democrats don't really care when a Republican gets shot. So it's really not that big of a deal. And if you remember, there wasn't a whole lot of uproar about gun control at that time because it was a Republican that got shot. But after that, between Las Vegas and this last shooting, nothing pro-gun is going to make it through. In fact, they've already stripped out the reciprocity on concealed carry. They've already stripped it out of that fix the NICS thing, that debacle that they were trying to pile all together.
Yeah, because I hadn't read I saw the headline, I hadn't read it, but I mean, yeah, they put fixed NICS in the omnibus spending thing, which Trump signed today. So I'm assuming that fixed NICS is now law without the reciprocity. So I guess that's dead now, because that was really the only thing, going to make, the only chance it had at passing is that they were together.
Right.
So
I'm looking through you guys' comments, trying to see if I can pick anything up. Somebody asked, and I don't see it, it's too far up, if we liked living in Louisiana. I would say we did up until this crazy legislation starts coming out.
2015.
Yeah.
Whenever John Bell Edwards was elected.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a rough day for Louisiana. What a horrible governor we have.
He's killing the economy. If he gets reelected, it may not be anybody left to at least anybody that works may not be in Louisiana anymore because there's not going to be any jobs.
No, exactly. And just wait till some of these bills make it. He'll be up there in the state house pumping his fist too. These anti-gun bills.
Oh yeah. And it's off to the presidency for him.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, I'm just rolling through here looking at y'all's comments real quick. I'm not ignoring anyone. I'm just trying to find anything that anybody might be addressing to us. Josh, talk a little bit about the company that you work with that produces and manufactures silencers.
I work for Acadian Armament. You just I guess mom and pop sort of. It's me and Roy and people who want to help us for free, like Paul. We appreciate. We came up with I guess I didn't come it up. I'm just a lawyer. The engineer of the group, Roy, he came up with two really unique silencer designs, and we've just been trying to grow the business. It's a tough time to be in. Not only a tough time, but it's a tough part of the gun industry to be in because it is so small, and you have the big names out there, and I mean I deal with it every day, so I have silencers on the brain, but it just blows me away that so few people know about them, and even hunters. I run across hunters all the time that have no idea you can hunt with silencers, and so there's this huge untapped market that hopefully they're starting to get the message, and maybe with the Hearing Protection Act and all this gun stuff, maybe they are getting the message. But I mean, we're a small company right now. We're getting some good. It's slow growth. We're doing well in Louisiana, but it's hard. Trying to get traction, get out. We got 3 silencers. I won't take up too much time making sales pitches or anything like that. But we have a website, AcadianArmament.com. Take a look. And Paul, if he wants, can post my email in the comment section. Anybody can email me about silencer questions, firearm questions, lead-wise. More than happy to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah, I can tell you guys, I'm making some notes here for myself. If you ever get a chance, and you will hopefully at some point as Acadian Armament grows, to use their silencers and their suppressors, whatever word you guys want to use, nomenclature is not important to me. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised at the ease, how you can clean their devices, and they actually, some things that we've been talking about, they actually can increase your accuracy, and it's impressive to see how they actually do it. The way they keep the gases behind the actual bullet as it's going down the muzzle and into the suppressor. Really cool stuff. I mean, if you get a chance, you know, I know they're working on some stuff where more of the language and more of the, I guess, visuals on why they operate like they do. But they're really, their types of suppressors are not, they're not just copying another company's design. They have actually manufactured their own design, and they're on their own with the way they do that. Again, anybody can copy somebody else's work, but what they've got is a very, very unique design that is, they actually have a patent pending on one of their designs. And from what I understand, hopefully another one coming very soon. So yeah, I mean, check their stuff out at acadianornament.com. That's the right email address?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, guys, check that out.
You might have to put it in the comments. A lot of people, we need to, I guess, find a shorter one too, because a lot of people have trouble with acadianarmament.com. It's kind of a mouthful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely check them out if you get a chance to. And, you know, we'll be doing some videos very, very soon on them. Actually, I have some downstairs on my bar that I was looking at this morning, trying to see which guns we'd put them on to do the reviews. So we'll definitely be looking at that very, very soon.
The website has tons of information on the technology. The engineer has been in charge of the website, so there's a lot of information. I've been trying to kind of, you know, cut it down to more, you know, my level. So most people, hopefully, on my level can understand. It's about, you know, 10,000 feet above my head when it comes to the science, but there's cartoons and visual aids. So, you know, if a lawyer can figure it out, I'm sure most of y'all can.
Right. Let's see. I'm looking at New Gold Standard is asking, sorry, not familiar. What are legal restrictions on suppressors? Josh, you want to talk about that?
So with legal restrictions on them?
Yes.
Is that what?
I guess what the law is as far as a tax stamp and all that, and how do you get one?
Basically, there's two ways. There's I guess you got the individual route, which you go and you I guess so if you're buying one and not building one, you need a tax stamp, Form 4. So if you go to get one as an individual, go to a gun shop, you want to purchase one, you fill out the form, you got to do a background check, fingerprints, photographs, turn all that in, various forms that the dealer takes care of. You got forms to notify the chief law enforcement officer. Most dealers take care of all of that. Dealers have it down to where you walk in, most of them nowadays, you say, I want it either, let's say as an individual, tell you everything you need. You give them your fingerprints, photographs. A lot of places you can do it there, send off the application. Now, here's the tricky part. Well, it costs $200 for the pleasure of getting a tax stamp to own one. And then I think I saw yesterday it's taking about 5 to 7 months for an individual to receive their tax stamp back. So when you purchase it, silencer sits at the dealer till the dealer receives the tax stamp, then you go and pick it up. The other method is through a trust or a legal entity like a corporation or LLC, which I don't know if anybody's ever done. I'm sure somebody's done, but that's a little more complicated. The other one is just a trust. So the same sort of thing where you create a trust. The trust is the one who's actually going to own it. And then depending how your trust is written, usually your trustees are the ones who can use the firearm. So same thing, you go to the dealer, bring your trust, fill out the form, fingerprints, photographs, send it all off. Trusts take longer because they have to review the trust to make sure it's legal. The ATF has actually admitted to me that the people reviewing these trusts are not only are they not attorneys for the specific state where the trust comes from, they're not even attorneys reviewing this, but I didn't really get in that with them. So how they can determine whether or not it's a valid trust or not, I don't know. And then that's taking about 10 to 11 months to get those back. The advantages of the trust, you still have to go after I mentioned the 41F rule, which kind of closed this quote trust loophole. So you still have to do the photographs and fingerprints like an individual. The advantages still is that you can have multiple people in the trust to use the firearm. If you own one as an individual, that is your silencer and it cannot be out of your possession. So somebody can shoot it, but you have to be with it essentially. With the trust, anybody that's a trustee under the trust, who the trust allows to be in possession of the firearm, can possess it, shoot it. I've talked to people who, used to be everybody would go trust because you didn't have to do fingerprints, photographs, and other things that have changed now that are no longer relevant. But a lot of people now, when they say, there's a lot of people out there that they say, I don't let anybody use my guns. I don't let anybody use my silencers. And so they just want to use it as an individual because they're the type of people that don't loan out their stuff to anybody. So they get it as an individual. So that's kind of the legal stumbling block into acquiring silencers. And that's why, like, when I say it's a tough business to be in, because when people say, wait, it's amazing that most people, the $200 is a lot of money, but what stops most people is the wait. People don't want to wait a year for to get their silencer. That's the biggest, kind of stumbling block. Which would be nice to get them off have the Hearing Protection Act passed to where you could just go in and buy like a rifle or a shotgun. Which is ridiculous. Like we're talking about earlier definitions, how is a silencer a firearm? You got me. But
yeah,
the ATF defines it as one, or Congress defined it as one. So I guess technically it is a firearm.
Well, guys, before we get out of here, of course, Josh, what is, and I will post this later, do you have an email address if somebody wants to send you questions that they could actually send them to you?
Yeah, probably the easiest one would be JBARNH and then the number 2 at gmail.com.
All right. We'll actually post that in the comment section, or the description section of this video once we get done here. And I'll also post your Acadian Armament website. Would you do me a favor too, Josh, and send me a link where folks can find the wording on this new this proposed wording from the DOJ to the ATF on bump stocks? And you send me a link on that, and I can post that as well.
Yeah, no problem.
Guys, I did want to point something out real quick. I thought this was kind of cool. Daniel, I'm not sure. Daniel, tell me how old you are. Daniel Waters says, wish me luck. I start working at Chick-fil-A tomorrow. I think that's cool. I mean, I definitely wish you luck, and hope you do well over there. Sounds like a good organization to work for. They seem like to be a pretty reputable organization and good to people. And I think I know the one over here they're great people. I mean, what is it they say whenever you, when you thank them at the window, they say, my pleasure. So get used to saying my pleasure, because you're going to be saying my pleasure a lot. But that's just how they are. They're polite. I mean, I like spending my money there. I mean, we work hard for our money, and I like to be treated with somebody that has a little bit of respect. The people that I encounter at Taco Bell or wherever else, that's going to rot your gut. There's not a whole lot of politeness there. So I think you chose a good place.
We have 2 in Lafayette, and every day lines wrapped around the building at lunchtime. So I don't know where you are, Daniel, but get ready because they're busy all the time.
Hey, real quick,
they're still closed on Sunday, which is great.
Yeah, that's true. Real quick, guys, I'm not sure where we're going to actually have these, but we do have some cool new T-shirts that came out in light of all the garbage coming on. Everybody trying to ban AR-15s. I'd like to show you guys. It says assault weapons, and then it's got a hammer, baseball bat, screwdriver, beer bottle, and a knife at the bottom. And then on the back, we put this on almost all of our shirts. On the back, it says voter, where the name would be like a jersey, and 2A as the number for the jersey, and our website underneath it. So we make a lot of these shirts. Anytime there's something going on in the news or whatever, we try to put something out there that's actually interesting, that's kind of specific to what's happening at the time. We need to find a place where we can put these things. 2avault.com is where we usually sell our T-shirts, although this one's not out there yet. But again, 2avault.com is where you can find a lot of our older T-shirts, and this one obviously will be out there very soon. As always, I want to thank everybody for joining us on a Friday night. It is 8:04 Central Standard Time, my time. So I appreciate everybody. I mean, it's big of you to take your time on a Friday night to do this. It's always a lot of fun. We are going to try to get more guests on. We will have Josh definitely on again. I actually definitely appreciate and value the expertise that different people bring to what we do. And Josh, being an attorney, and actually working in the field, not just an attorney, he works in the firearms industry, and that's nice to have because we get a chance to bounce some things off of. And knowing Josh, if there's something we can't answer, I'm sure he'll find the answer to it. So again, guys, thanks for hanging out with us on a Friday night. We hope to have some more videos coming out next week on some pretty cool topics. I expect to be filming most of the day tomorrow, so I should have some things out later this weekend or tomorrow. Thanks again, guys, for hanging out with us. Josh, thank you for hanging out with us. We appreciate you spending your Friday night with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're going to cut it out. And again, as always, thank you. I appreciate that. I know I repeat it, but I mean it, and it means a lot to me that you guys spend your Friday nights with us. So we will see you for sure next Friday night.